So what we're going to be doing today, first of all, I always like to do a little bit of background of where we're from. We're from the Environmental Studies Center, which is in Mobile. It's a part of the Mobile County Public School System, and our purpose at the center is education, educating people about the environment and the plants and animals that live in it. And along with that, we also run a wildlife rehabilitation program there, which basically what that is we take in injured wildlife, we fix them up, and then our goal is to eventually release them back into the wild. On occasion, though, we get in animals that can't be returned to the wild, and a lot of these animals get to stay at the center with us. So the center is open to the public Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 o'clock. At the end of this program, we do have brochures. If you want to find out a little more about it, we'll be glad to give you a brochure. So what we're going to be talking about today are birds of prey. And all of the birds that you're going to see today initially came to our wildlife rehabilitation program. And they were deemed unreleasable. And as we see each one, I'll tell you what happened to them and why they are with us. So you'll get to learn a little more about them. But birds of prey include 6 different types of birds. The owls, which we have here, the hawks, the ospreys, the kites, the falcons, and the eagles. So these are all similar. They're all in this bird of prey group. And they all have similar adaptations. First off, all birds of prey have a hooked beak. Their beak is rounded and pointed on the end. They actually use their beak to tear their food up with. Birds don't have teeth, so they can't chew their food like we do. Birds of prey have feet that are strong with very sharp toenails. You'll notice we have gloves on because their toenails can go right through our skin. They're very, very sharp. Birds of prey use their feet to catch their food with. So they swoop down and grab their food with their feet. Birds of prey are predators. This is an animal that hunts for their food, so they have to go out and capture their food. They're all carnivores, so they only eat meat. Now, in the bird of prey family, there are the nocturnal birds of prey, which are the owls. So that's what we're going to start with today, the owls. This is Lucy, that is Ricky, and these are eastern screech owls. And a lot of people, when they see screech owls, think that they're looking at baby owls. But these are not babies. They are full grown. They're not going to get any bigger than this. Now, screech owls come in 2 different colors. In fact, you're probably noticing that right now. Lucy is the red phase, Ricky is the gray phase. Their feather color is kind of like our hair color. Some of us have red hair, some blonde hair, brown hair. Well, with screech owls, some have red feathers, some have brown feathers, but they are still the same type of owl, so they're not different species. Screech owls are cavity nesting birds. They like to nest in holes in trees or in crooks that are in the trees. In fact, what we always recommend is if you have a large yard and there's a dead tree in it, if that dead tree is not going to hit anything when it falls, we really recommend to leave dead trees alone because they provide a lot of habitat for lots of animals, including screech owls. Because dead trees is where you usually find a lot of holes. So these guys will live in them. One way to attract screech owls to your yard is actually to get a nest box that is made specifically for screech owls. And screech owls are kind of good to have around. First of all, they love to eat insects. That's the main type of their diet. And their favorite food are roaches. So this is why it's good to have them around. The more screech owls we have, the fewer roaches we'll have to worry about. Out next, and then I'm going to be putting Lucy up. All right. So Luna looks quite a bit different from the screech owls. First of all, she's larger. Her colors are quite different. She's a very pretty owl. You'll notice that she's kind of gold on the back with the white on the belly. Her head is that heart-shaped head. She got hit by a car. You'll notice her right wing. Right now she's just kind of holding it out, but she is kind of holding it out, and there's a big gap in the feathers where the damage was there. She also had some trauma to her head, so she sometimes gets a little off balance kind of like the screech owls do. So barn owls, a couple neat things about them. They are found in barns and old buildings. Farmers love to have them in their barns because of what they eat. Barn owls mainly eat mice. All right? So think about what mice eat. Mice like to eat seeds and grains, things that the farmers are keeping in their barn to either plant or feed to their animals. And so farmers don't want mice eating all of this stuff. So if they have a barn owl living in their barn, they should be very happy because that barn owl is going to take care of any rat or mouse problem that might be going on in that barn. Now, the barn owls mainly eat mice. They usually don't eat rats. This is a smaller owl. To give you an idea of what good hunters they are, they average 2 to 3 mice a night with no problem. So think about a family of barn owls. A barn owl usually has 2 to 6 babies. They can have a large clutch of babies. So if we have mom and dad and let's say 3 babies, that means we're going to be averaging about 10 mice a night that they're going to be eating. It takes about a month to raise baby barn owls. So that means they're going to eat around 300 mice in 1 month. So this is the ultimate mousetrap right here, a barn owl. And this is why farmers are so happy to have them around. They don't mess with anything else. They're not going to mess with the animals that are in the barn. They're just out there eating those mice. Now, first of all, I do want to point out the heart-shaped face. Notice how it kind of forms a funnel over both eyes. They have what are known as facial discs. All owls have these facial discs. And what these discs do is they literally funnel sounds to their ears, which are on each side of their head. You don't see the ears on birds because birds don't have the outer ear part like we do. They just have a hole and it's covered up by their feathers. So this is Brody. Brody is a barred owl. And he's called this because he has these brown vertical stripes on his belly that look very similar to bars. So Brody came to us after he fell out of the nest as a baby. He was about 2 weeks old, almost 5 years ago. Actually, this April, he'll be 5. There was a storm. It blew him out of the nest. And when he fell out of the nest, he landed on his left side. And it damaged his left wing, his left eye, and then he also had some head trauma. So sometimes when Brody does the flapping, he's just excited and he wants to stretch. But because of the head trauma that he had, sometimes he'll start kind of twitching from that head trauma. It's not really a seizure, it's almost like a little seizure. He gets off balance and then he just kind of falls. So I'm always kind of watching for that. So I really don't move around much with him just so he can stay balanced. So the barred owl, well, first of all, I always like to talk about owl adaptations. Owls are really cool birds. We know they're nocturnal, and being nocturnal, they have large eyes. And these large eyes are what help them see at night. Let's swing around this way. So that's why they have the large eyes. They're active at night. When an owl flies, they fly silently. Their feathers are made in such a way that they're kind of open on the end. So when they flap, the air goes through them, keeping them silent. Most birds, the feathers are held tightly together, so when they flap, you can hear them. So silent flight is going to help them hunt because the prey will not hear them when they're flying up to them. So silent flight is another adaptation that they have. Their heads move a lot. They're always moving their heads. And they do this because they cannot move their eyes. If we keep our heads still, we can move our eyes side to side and up and down. An owl can't do that. If they want to look to the side, they have to physically move their head. Their eyes, they're large on the outside, but they're even larger. Let's go up this way. There we go. They're even larger on the inside. Their eyes literally fill about 2/3 of their head. They're kind of pear-shaped. They're small in the front, and then as they go into the head, they get larger. And because of that size, of course that's to help them see at night, but because of that size, they're not able to move. There's not enough room for them to move. They actually have extra vertebrae in their neck that allow them to turn their head around as much as they do. And this is Jasper. Jasper also was hit by a car, and he had damage. You can kind of see his right wing is kind of up a little bit, so he had damage to that right wing. So he's called a great horned owl because of the feather tufts that he has relaxed right now. When they're relaxed, they lay him down. When they're excited, they lay him up. And he's just like, leave me alone. I'm okay. I'm good. So he kind of has horns that are lying flat, I guess. More like a ram, I guess, how they go out to the side instead of up. But they are very long. They're a couple inches long. And again, when he has them up, they look like horns. They're not the ears. Remember, they're just feathers. So his ears are on each side of his head. Now, the owl is a really good hunting animal because of all of the adaptations that they have. And I always like to kind of go over how they hunt and how they catch their prey. So we're going to all pretend that we are great horned owls, okay? It's midnight, because this is when we're up. We're all nocturnal, and we're hungry. And we can't go run to McDonald's or run to Walmart to grab some food to eat, because we're owls. And they don't allow owls in there. Well, we don't have money either, so we wouldn't get anything. So we're sitting out in the woods, and what we're going to do is sit in a tree, and we're just going to listen. We don't really use our eyes to begin with. So we listen because our hearing is really good. Our ears are actually kind of shaped in a different way. One kind of goes up, and one kind of angles down to give them a better range of hearing around them. So we're sitting in a tree, heck, our eyes could even be closed, and we're listening. We hear something on the ground. This is when we're going to use our nocturnal vision to see what it is. It's a mouse. That looks pretty good. That's one of our favorite foods. But now we need to catch that mouse. We have our silent flight, so the mouse doesn't know we're coming. I don't have a peregrine falcon, but I have a cuter one instead. She is an American Kestrel. So she is a falcon. She's actually the smallest falcon that you're going to find in this area. And a couple of ways to tell falcons. Probably the primary way to tell a bird of prey, to tell a falcon in the bird of prey family, is to look for vertical stripes on its face. They have what are called malar stripes. The Kestrel has two. They have one kind of in the front of their eye and one behind their eye. And those are called malar stripes. And all falcons have these stripes. The peregrine falcon has a very wide malar stripe right under its eye. But that's the main way you can identify falcons. Falcons are very streamlined with their feathers very close because they fly fast. They mainly eat birds. So birds are flying. So this means the falcon has to fly really good and be very maneuverable as it's flying. Their wings are very pointed. It's hard to tell when they're folded up, but when they're out, they're very pointed and narrow coming out, making it easy to maneuver around. Now, the Kestrel is around here year-round in this area. We have two other falcons that only migrate through here. The Merlin is another small falcon, and this is around, it's getting close to migration time. Mid-March and April, you might start seeing some Merlins. And then the peregrine falcon comes through here in the spring and the fall when they're migrating. But they don't stay here year-round. So the BroadWinged Hawk is one of the smaller hawks that we have living in this area. This is Bailey, and Bailey is related to the red-tailed hawk, but Bailey doesn't have a red tail. The red-tailed hawk is actually the largest hawk that we have living in this area. So the bouteilles have short tails that are very wide, and their bodies are just kind of thick, while the accipiters, the other family of hawks, are very long and narrow with long, narrow tails. So the reason that we have Bailey is because, she was hit by a car. There's a theme going on here. I always like to kind of talk about that. With owls, they tend to get hit by cars because they're active at night. They're flying, we don't see the owl, it flies across the road and they get hit. They get blinded by the headlights sometimes. So that's a lot of times why owls get hit by cars. Some animals get hit by cars because they just run across the road and don't know to look both ways. But sometimes animals get hit by cars because they're being attracted to the road because of food. Okay, so that's the picture right there. He loves to, you're just talking to Mike, aren't you? He was too close to you. All right, let me get you situated here. Okay, so this is Luco, and yes, he is a bald eagle. And I always like to kind of give a little history about Luco. First of all, he's 20 years old now. He hatched out back in 1999 in Cape Canaveral, Florida. And back then, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they always checked the bald eagle nests to kind of see how many babies they were, to kind of see how old they were. And they had gone and checked out Luco's nest, and there were 2 babies in it. And what they noticed is that one baby had a deformed beak. They noticed the upper beak was curving to the side. So remember, we talked about bird beaks and how birds of prey use their beaks to tear up their food. Well, the wildlife officer knew that Luco would not be able to tear up his food with his beak being crooked. So they took Luco out, brought him to a rehab center, where they tried several different things to try to fix the beak, and it could not be fixed. We feel like it was a genetic deformity. It was born crooked, and you can try braces and surgeries and everything, but it just kept coming out sideways. So he has basically been in captivity his whole life because we have to cut up his food for him to eat. They eat fish. I could put a whole fish in his cage. He'd hold it with his feet, but he couldn't eat it. So we chop his food up, and we usually hand feed him. I usually hand feed him, but sometimes we can put it on a plate that's flat, and he'll pick it up from the side. He kind of goes sideways and picks it up that way since he can't pick it up from the front. So we also have to file his beak every month. Beaks are like toenails and fingernails. They constantly grow. So in the wild, birds are always using their beak to eat with, and it naturally files the beak down. But since he can't use his beak naturally, it would just keep growing. So we file it monthly. He's very used to this. He's had it done his whole life. And we just do that every month to keep it at a normal, basically at a normal length. So bald eagles, they are pretty cool. They are a bird that's basically brown with a white head and white tail. They don't always have that white head and white tail though. They don't get that until they turn 5. When they're younger than 5, they're basically a brown bird. And as each year progresses, they get a few more white feathers, sometimes scattered on their body, on their tail, on their head. And when they turn 5 is when they have the pure white head and pure white tail. Their eyes are gold as adults, but as a juvenile, they're brown. They don't get the gold eyes until they turn, usually about 5.5 years is when they get their gold eyes. So they eat fish. So this is a bird that you're going to find near the water. Whether it's a river, a lake, or the coast, this is where you're going to find them. So that's why they're mistaken for ospreys quite a bit. They're basically the same color as an osprey, the browns and the whites. The way you tell them apart in the wild, up close you can tell them apart pretty easily, but in the wild, bald eagles are brown. Their whole body is brown. So the underside is brown. So if you see one flying, you'll see the brown belly. If it's an osprey, the underside is white. So that's the best way to identify. I know, you have to stretch one more time. I know, show them your wingspan. It's about 6 feet across, the wingspan. Yes, picture time. Oh, God, it just kills my arm holding you up that high. I just can't hold you up that high all the time. You're just so heavy. There you go. But that's how you tell the osprey from the bald eagle, is look at that belly.